All right, so we're diving into something pretty crucial today.
Hmm.
How to lead effectively in a world that's becoming more digital every day.
It's a challenge a lot of people are facing for sure.
It is, and luckily we've got some great insights to help us navigate it. We're taking a deep dive into Chapter 6 of Leadership in Digitized Workplaces from the book, The Future of Work.
That's a great resource, and it's packed with research and practical advice.
It is, so let's jump right in. One of the first things they point out is that a lot of the existing research focuses on three key areas:
Hmm.
leadership styles, building trust in digital environments, and the impact of digital work on individuals and teams.
Right, those are like the cornerstones of good leadership, no matter the setting.
Exactly. But the question is, how do these things change when we move into a more digital space?
That's the key question, and the chapter digs into that. It emphasizes the importance of something called social presence for leaders in these digital environments.
Okay, so social presence. What exactly does that mean in a digital context?
Well, they break it down into three dimensions: co-presence, behavioral engagement, and psychological involvement.
I think we can all relate to feeling more connected to someone when we're actually in the same room with them, right?
Yeah.
That's co-presence, I guess.
Exactly. And in a digital environment, leaders have to find ways to recreate that sense of co-presence using different tools like video conferencing. That way, you can still have those visual cues and interactions that are so important for building relationships.
Right. It's not just about being seen, though.
Yeah.
It's also about being actively involved.
Right. Absolutely.
Uh,
That's where behavioral engagement comes in. It's about actively participating in discussions, responding to messages, showing that you're genuinely interested in what your team is doing, even when you're not physically there.
then there's that psychological aspect, making people feel heard and valued.
Exactly. That's psychological involvement, and it's crucial for creating a sense of trust and connection within a team.
So it's more than just checking boxes and being present online.
Mm.
It's about making those genuine connections.
Precisely. And one thing the chapter highlights is how different digital tools can actually enhance different aspects of this social presence.
Okay, so give me an example. How would you choose the right tool for the job?
Well, let's say you just need to update everyone on a project. A quick text message or email might be enough, but if you're trying to resolve a conflict or build consensus, you might need something more interactive, like a video call.
So it's about understanding the strength and weaknesses of each communication tool and choosing the best one for the situation.
Exactly, like having a toolkit and knowing which tool to use for which task.
Makes sense.
Well,
Now, what about leadership styles? Does the digital world demand that we change how we lead?
it's a great question, and one the chapter explores in depth. They suggest that some leadership styles might need a bit of a digital makeover. They point out that transformational leadership, which can be so effective in person, might not always translate as well in a virtual setting.
Really? But isn't transformational leadership all about inspiring your team and having a clear vision for the future? Those things are still important in a digital world, right?
Of course. But think about how those inspiring messages are usually delivered. It's often through face-to-face interactions, passionate speeches, that energy you get from being in the same room.
I see what you mean. In a digital world, some of those nuances, those nonverbal cues can get lost.
Exactly. It's like trying to give a rousing speech through a text message. It just doesn't have the same impact.
So what's the solution?
Well, the chapter emphasizes the importance of leadership styles that focus on building trust, fostering collaboration, and promoting well-being in those virtual teams.
So styles that are less about the grand gestures and more about the day-to-day support.
Exactly. Think about approaches like servant leadership, engaging leadership, or ethical leadership. These styles prioritize building strong relationships and creating a positive team culture, even when everyone's working remotely.
Okay, so we need to adapt our communication styles and maybe even rethink some of our leadership approaches.
Yeah.
But what about the practical side of leading a virtual team? What are some of the challenges there and how do we overcome them?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is definitely communication. It's so easy for things to get lost in translation when you're not face to face.
Oh, absolutely. I've been in way too many email chains that just spiraled into confusion.
It happens. And that's where this idea of media synchronicity theory, or MST, comes in. The authors really highlight it as a framework for understanding how to communicate effectively in virtual teams.
Okay, MST. That's a new one for me. Break it down for me. How does it apply to leadership?
Sure. So basically, MST suggests that effective communication isn't just about picking the richest media like video calls. It's about choosing the right tools and styles for the specific task at hand.
So not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. Sometimes a simple phone call is way more efficient than a video conference. And sometimes a detailed document is the best way to convey complex information. It's all about being strategic and understanding what works best in each situation.
So it's about using the right tool for the job,
Hmm.
just like we were talking about with social presence.
Exactly. And MST also highlights the importance of having those clear communication norms and expectations within the team.
Like setting guidelines for when to use different channels, response times, even virtual meeting etiquette.
Yes, exactly. It's about making sure everyone's on the same page about how to communicate effectively in a digital environment.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I've noticed with leading virtual teams is the challenge of building trust. It's just harder to develop those strong relationships when you're not interacting in person regularly.
You're absolutely right. And the research in the chapter backs that up. They say that while there's a lot of understanding about how to foster trust and establish virtual teams, there's still a big gap when it comes to more dynamic settings.
You mean like hybrid teams that go back and forth between in-person and remote work?
Exactly. Or even teams where the level of virtuality changes over time. It's like trying to build trust on shifting sand.
So how do you even create that sense of trust when the working dynamics are constantly in flux?
Well, that's a tough question, and one that researchers are still working on. But there are some things leaders can do. For instance, being transparent about decisions, actively seeking feedback from the team, and creating opportunities for virtual social interaction can all help build trust and psychological safety.
It's interesting. It seems like the digital world just demands a different kind of trust building, more intentional and proactive.
And it requires leaders to be more aware of the individual needs and preferences of their team members. Some people thrive in a fully virtual setting, while others really crave that face-to-face interaction.
It's like with communication styles. There's no one-size-fits-all solution for building trust in a digital world.
Precisely. And this actually leads us to another area of research that's emerging: the role of leaders in shaping social networks within their teams.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about how relationships develop naturally in a traditional office setting. You've got those water cooler moments, casual conversations in the hallway, impromptu brainstorming sessions. All those informal interactions help build camaraderie and a sense of community.
But in a virtual environment, those opportunities for spontaneous connection are often missing.
Exactly. And that's where leaders need to step in and be more intentional about creating virtual versions of those water cooler moments.
How do you even do that?
It could be something as simple as scheduling a virtual coffee break where everyone can just chat about non-work things, or encouraging social interaction in online platforms, maybe even using virtual reality tools to create more immersive experiences. The key is to find those opportunities for connection even when people are physically apart.
It's like the leader becomes an architect, designing those virtual spaces for connection.
I like that analogy. And it's not just about the social aspect, it's also about making sure knowledge is shared and people are collaborating effectively in that digital environment.
So things like setting up shared online workspaces, encouraging peer-to-peer learning, and using digital tools to capture and share knowledge effectively.
Exactly, making sure that information flows freely within the team, regardless of where they are physically located.
This has been so insightful. It's clear that leading in a digital world requires a whole new set of skills and approaches. But before we wrap up, there's one more emerging area of research. I wanted to touch on AI-based leadership. It sounds kind of futuristic, but it's gaining some traction.
It does a bit, right? But when you think about it, AI is already making its way into our workplaces in so many ways.
True.
And AI systems can analyze huge amounts of data, give insights into how teams are performing, even offer personalized feedback to employees.
So it's almost like having a virtual leadership assistant, but one with a supercharged brain.
Exactly. And while we're still in the early stages of research on this AI-based leadership, could really change how we work and lead.
It's exciting, but I imagine there are some concerns too, right?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of ethical and practical things to consider. Like, how can you make sure these AI systems are fair and unbiased? How do you balance the efficiency of data-driven decisions with the human element that's so essential for building trust?
Those are big questions.
Yeah.
It seems like finding that balance between human leadership and AI will be key.
I think so. The future of leadership will probably involve a combination of human skills and technology. The best leaders will be those who can embrace those technological advancements while still understanding the importance of things like connection, empathy, and ethical decision-making.
So it's not about replacing human leaders with robots. It's about using AI to become even better leaders.
Exactly, finding ways to leverage technology to enhance our leadership capabilities.
We've covered so much today. It's clear that digital leadership is a constantly evolving field. but this deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's fascinating to explore these challenges and opportunities that are shaping the future of how we lead.
So for our listeners who are ready to put some of these ideas into practice, what are some of the key takeaways they can walk away with?
Well, first remember that social presence is crucial in this digital world. Think about how you're connecting with your team. Choose the right tools and make that effort to build relationships even when you're not physically together.
Right. And be open to adapting your leadership style to better suit a digital environment.
Exactly. Focus on building trust, encouraging collaboration, and supporting your team's well-being. And make sure everyone knows how to communicate effectively in that digital space.
And remember, building trust in virtual or hybrid teams takes a more deliberate approach. Create those opportunities for social interaction. Be transparent and get feedback from your team.
As we all navigate this new landscape of digital work, the most successful leaders will be the ones who can build those strong connections and cultivate trust and well-being within their teams, no matter where they're located.
That's such a great point. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the future of leadership.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time, keep learning and keep leading.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.